welcome to another edition of Casey's Corner 3. I took a couple weeks off because I wasn't driving to work. I was working from home. The holidays with Christmas and New Year's, so, just hung around and watched basketball and football, and now it's back to recording. This episode is going to be focused on the Philadelphia 76ers, who were my preseason pick to be the number one seed in the East and make the NBA Finals. They have been very underwhelming, and it's surprising saying that because they're 23-14. But with the talent that they have, they should probably be about 7 games better. They should probably be closer to the Bucks than the Raptors. And it was what I had talked about when recording with Andrew and Alvin. The reason why I was like, I see them as the number one seed, but I could also see Brett Brown being the first coach fired. He wouldn't be even if he got fired today because Fizdale got fired. But I could see it going either way because of the way that their roster was built. They're really an odd cast of characters bunched together. And, depending on the matchup and just depending on, how Ben Simmons plays or if Korkmaz is hitting threes or if Embiid feels healthy, and it's just so interesting to see the dynamic that this team has, where some nights they look like they are the best team in the league and they should just roll into a championship, and then other nights they look like they could miss the playoffs. And for this team to have such a wide range of good nights and bad nights, it really shows the flaw in Elton Brand's plan of roster construction and the flaw of Brett Brown's coaching strategy with this team. One of the reasons why I chose to talk about them tonight and what makes me think about their roster is I came across a tweet from some guy just saying, at this point, with the way that their record is and the way that they're playing, do you start looking into trading Al Horford? Which I immediately fired up the trade machine to try to figure out how to get him on the Spurs. And it's just, when the Sixers signed Horford, my first reaction was like, well, that doesn't make sense because you're just signing another big that's going to clog up the middle. But then I thought about it and I'm like, okay, well, he's kind of a pick and pop big. He can shoot, he can stretch the floor, you can run this high-low action with him and Embiid that should work very well. But then you throw Ben Simmons on the court and you just have another big, and then with Tobias Harris, if he's not shooting 40% from 3, you just have a bunch of big guys who get in the way of each other. There's no way around it. So it's almost like they really do, if they want to win a title, they have to find a way to move one of these guys, maybe a couple of these guys. Their roster is too flawed for them to compete. And sure, they could still make the Eastern Conference Finals, but when they make the Eastern Conference Finals, let's say they go up against the Bucks, I just don't think that they're versatile enough to play the Bucks. because the Bucks can go at them with size because they have the Lopez twins, they have Giannis, they have Chris Middleton. They can play small with Eric Bledsoe and George Hill, and they have Korver and Connaughton. They can do so many different things that I don't think Philly has answers for. And while Embiid might be as good, if not better, some nights than Giannis, like, at least they have Robin Lopez that they can guard him with. And I know that, Robin Lopez isn't the great big stopper, but he's a solid player. Who are you guarding Giannis with on this team? Are you going to throw Ben Simmons on him? Because Ben Simmons is, about the same size and as athletic and all of that, but now you're having him spend this energy as being the defensive stopper, and Ben Simmons isn't Kawhi, because Kawhi can put in a bunch of effort on defense because his offensive game is so smooth that he doesn't need to put in a lot of effort on offense to score 20, to score 30. He just gets to his spots at his own pace. And it's kind of like how the article about LeBron, how he figured out a way to rest himself in the middle of gameplay. I'm not sure where the Sixers can go with these moves. The trade that I brought up with the trade machine was trading DeMar DeRozan, Marco Bellinelli, and Bryn Forbes. So getting a smaller guy who's also able to create shots. You're pretty much getting a shorter Ben Simmons and DeMar DeRozan. But you're getting Marco Bellinelli, who's played with the Sixers before, who, if you're playing him sparingly, can be an asset. My main complaint with Bellinelli on the Spurs is that he just takes up minutes for the young guys that I want to see grow. But he has the capability of spacing the floor. And same thing with Bryn Forbes. Bryn Forbes is a great catch and shoot player who's capable of getting hot and scoring 18 to 20. And he tries on defense, at least. So, and then the Spurs would get Al Horford, and then I think I put Shake Milton on it, who's a young player that doesn't play, and just kind of a throw-in deal. So, is something like that something that the Sixers need to do? I mean, I only put in that trade because, again, I wanted to find a way to get Horford on the Spurs, because I think being able to have a front court of Horford, Aldridge, and Poeltl is a little better than the Aldridge, Poeltl, and Trey Lyles front court that they're throwing out. And not trying to say anything about Trey Lyles, because he's been awesome in his small role, but Horford's just a little bit better. And by a little, I mean he's probably a lot better. But where else? Who else? What else can be done for this roster to make them that finals contender that a lot of people had them before the season started? Do you find a way to maybe trade with... I'm trying to think of teams that have players that would fit with the Sixers and can take on the contracts. And maybe you're looking at a team like Orlando, and you swap Aaron Gordon for Al Horford. Like, does Aaron Gordon fit a little bit better with the Sixers? I don't know. Do you try to trade Tobias Harris and like take a loss there. I don't know who's going to try to trade for that guy because they just signed him to this ridiculous 4-year, $170 million deal. There's something in that range. Like, what did Tobias Harris ever prove to get that kind of contract? I'm at a loss. I don't know if there's a move to make, and they almost seem like the Rams of the NBA, where they got all this talent, they got good enough to compete for a title. In the Rams' case, they made it to the Super Bowl, but then it's almost like they missed the window, and then they decided that they were going to spend all this money on the wrong deals. They decided, like for the Rams, they decided to trade 2 first-round picks for Jalen Ramsey, who's they're going to have to sign to an extension. So you're going to have all this money wrapped up in Gurley and Goff and Donald and Ramsey and some other guys, and you're not going to have anybody on rookie deals other than like second to 7th rounders. You don't have any first-round picks the next 2 years. And with the Sixers, you have all this money wrapped up in Horford, Embiid, Simmons, Harris. And you traded picks to get Harris. You traded stuff to get Jimmy Butler. And the guys that you're paying, you almost have to take a loss on the deal somehow. You have to take worse players on bad contracts if you want to try to move them. So then you stand pat. But standing pat doesn't do you any favors because you're still just going to be in the same predicament. And again, like I'm racking my brain of like what team right now could use Ben Simmons, and you kind of like could like the Thunder, could they try to trade for Ben Simmons with Chris Paul and pair Ben Simmons with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, have Chris Paul, who is a better shooter, a better scorer than Ben Simmons, and probably as good of a playmaker. He just doesn't have the same size that Ben Simmons does. But you can at least you at least have somebody on the court in him who is a great free throw shooter and a very good 3-point shooter and an all-time great mid-range shooter. But do the Thunder want that? Because they kind of like the way that Chris Paul's working with the Thunder. They're, I believe, the 7th seed right now in the playoffs for the Western Conference. So let's just take them off the table. Like the Pacers, do they have any? They can't trade anybody. Who from like the Knicks or the Nets or the Hawks or the Hornets? Just go down the line. Like what team has anything to trade that matches the contract that just makes something worthwhile for the Sixers? Because the Sixers aren't going to trade Embiid. Everybody else is on the table. So, I mean, people might say that Simmons isn't on the table. But if they got the right deal, they would flip Simmons in a heartbeat. They're not trading Embiid. But there's no deal to be made. And I guess what I'm really trying to say to wrap up this episode is the Sixers screwed themselves and they backed themselves into a corner, and they just have to hope that the way that the NBA playoffs works is the team with the most talent usually wins out at the end of the day. And they just have to bank on that's going to happen. Top to bottom, they're probably as talented as anybody in the league. But does their talent mesh well enough to be able to beat the more well-rounded teams? If they make the finals, they're not beating either of the LA teams. And right now, I don't even think that they would beat the Bucks. And honestly, I don't think that they would beat the Celtics the way that team is shaped. And that's all I have to say about the Sixers. I will be back with another episode where the Benchwarmers podcast took a break too. And that should be back coming up shortly. And I look forward to talking to you again.